indicated his optimism regarding a breakthrough in West Asia, noting that he anticipates securing an agreement with Tehran to prolong the truce and restore transit through the strategic maritime choke point over the next week. Referring to Iran's anger over Israeli strikes against Hezbollah, Trump told ABC News that he has fixed what he described as a glitch. Iran has insisted that Lebanon be included in any broader ceasefire arrangement between US and Iran, but the US and Israel have opposed linking the two issues. However, Washington's push to secure a halt in the fighting coming shortly after Tehran threatened to altogether walk away from negotiations over the matter. That suggests that Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu may not be fully aligned on this issue. The US President's optimism in ABC News interview was built on the statement that he made just a few hours earlier when he announced that Israel and Hezbollah had agreed to stop the fighting, and he had spoken to both independently. He had said that negotiations with Iran were moving rapidly. However, there comes a divergence yet again. Trump had given a contrary view about his enthusiasm for the talks shortly before his Truth Social post, speaking to CNBC. The US president had said that he doesn't care if the Iran talks collapse, adding that they have started to get very boring. Now, Trump separately told NBC News that he thinks US and Iran have been talking too much. Well, the contradictory statements, time and again, the divergences, they came within a span of 24 hours, underscoring the volatility of the situation as the ceasefire faces renewed strain amid retaliatory strikes between US and Iranian forces that have been trading fire at different intervals in the last week in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's Revolutionary Guards have now claimed responsibility for targeting a Panama-flagged container ship, MSC Sariska V, with a cruise missile. It said that the strike was in retaliation for an earlier attack on an Iranian vessel near Oman. The claim came after there were reports of a ship being hit by an explosion while sailing in the Arabian Gulf, about 40 nautical miles southeast of Iraq's Qasr port. The UK Maritime Trade Operations said that the blast occurred on the vessel's starboard side and was followed by a large explosion. All crew members were reported safe and the ship continued its voyage. Now, which Trump should one believe? The one that hopes that the deal is imminent, it should be finalized by next week, or the one says that he doesn't care even if the deal collapses or if there's no deal at all? For more on this, I'm now being joined by Hafid Boutaleb, who's a geopolitics and international relations analyst associated with AOB Group. Hafid, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for making time for us. Which Trump should one be believing? 24 hours, divergent statements, and it's not just the last 24 hours, that's just a reference here. It's time and time and time again. Different interviews, different publications, more statements coming in. How do you assess this one?
Yes, it is very confusing, and thank you for the invitation. There are two Donald Trumps, definitely. There is one Donald Trump who is in contact with his military and is careful in somehow defending the interest of the United States. And there is another Donald Trump who is more or acutely close to the Israelis and Israelis defending their own agenda in this whole turmoil. Today, in a matter of fact, apparently, according to Axios, there was a phone call between Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu this night, and apparently it went very bad in terms of tone between the two politicians. And Donald Trump is wondering why Israelis are escalating, but he can't publicly disclaim the Israelis. They, as you know, one of his closest allies in Washington are lobbyists for Israel, and he has to publicly acknowledge what they are doing. But according to Axios, the tone now is severely degrading because Israelis don't care about American interests in the region. And this is obviously what's going on.
Yeah, Hafid, let me come in there. Now, 17th April, that's when that ceasefire was determined. This deal was struck in, or the ceasefire was announced in a meeting in Washington. And since then till now, you've seen Israel go as far into Lebanon as they haven't in the last 26 years. This is when a ceasefire has been extended. Are Trump's divergences emanating to camouflage the fact that he's unable to rein in Netanyahu?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, Donald Trump don't want to show this image of a U.S. president who is submitting to the decisions of Tel Aviv. But in the ground, on the field, in the Middle East, that is what's going on today, since the 28th of February, actually. What is going on now in southern Lebanon is a turning point. The Israelis are not planning to occupy momentarily. They are planning to stay, to remain in southern Lebanon, definitely. And for the first time since 1948, Israeli officials are considering a border outside the traditional mandatory Palestine territory and to extend the Israeli border on the expense of Lebanon. And they state it officially. And they also want to annexate the maritime section equivalent to the land section they are now annexing. And on this maritime section, there are huge gas reserves that Lebanon was relying on to rebuild itself. And now they're going to be deprived from these gas reserves because of the attitude of Israel, of course, but also because of the attitude of Hezbollah, who has completely ignored the interest of Lebanon. So as we can see here, there are two main entities who are Israel and Iran who are confronting, and countries, whether or organizations, whether small as Hezbollah or big as the United States, who are behaving on behalf of these two entities.
Let me bring in the other fact here that there are constant statements coming out from Donald Trump on his social media. Now, he is the US president. Anything he says, even remotely to any news publication, it is going to make headlines. Is Trump negotiating too publicly? Is that also causing the delay as the matter is already so complicated?
Yes, and that's what he personally acknowledges when he said recently or yesterday that the United States has spoke too much on both sides. He said both sides have spoke too much and it's time now for silence. And I think that this confusion shows how much in Washington there are issues in considering factually what's going on. Since day one, they were lured by Israelis into that war based on wrong reports. And up until today, they haven't or made the right assessment of that situation so they can move on from the situation where they are. Now they are stuck in completely unbalanced relation with Iran. Iran that is very smartly using the how do you call it, the war, unbalanced war against the United States in this confrontation, and very successfully, because as we can see, the United States are completely puzzled since there are threats of invading Karg Island or invading Kashem Island, or the blockade they imposed on Iranian ports. Nothing has worked, and they are puzzled by the Iranian attitudes. And Iranians now have upper hand on one side. On the other side, Israelis have the upper hand on the Lebanon. So as I told you, the real confrontation it's between Iran and Israel that are progressing in their agenda, and other entities like Hezbollah or big countries like United States who are working with them on each one's respective agenda. So the situation is very hard to read because the powers on the ground are not really reflecting the situation, the ongoing situation on the ground.
Hafid, thanks so much for breaking that down. And there are conflicting views which come in regarding seeing US as the main military power here. Militarily, there is no match. Everyone understands that. But when it comes to the battlefield, when it comes to the sticking points, it was already a complicated situation with the nuclear program not being able to, no, both sides not arriving at a conclusion regarding the nuclear program of Iran. Now you also have the Strait of Hormuz, and now Lebanon is also a major part of any peace deal. So it only gets more and more and more complicated, or rather, I'd say more murky as time progresses. We'll need to wait and watch how this one pans out. Hafid, thanks so much for making time.
Thank you very much.